At 3:47 in the morning, the baby monitor crackled with a thin, buzzing hiss and yanked Evelyn out of the restless sleep she had been clinging to on the narrow fold-out bed in the maid's room. 4 months working inside Marcus Castellano's mansion, and she still had not learned how to live with the silence in this place. It was a silence so thick it felt poured into the air, heavy and suffocating, like velvet curtains pulled tight over the very last thread of moonlight. She was 27, yet her bones ached as if she had already lived 100 years. In the dark, she moved carefully, slipping through hallways of marble floors that were worth more than everything she had ever owned, following the weak, fragile cry of Sophia, the 4-month-old baby whose father had never once lifted her into his arms. Evelyn gathered the little girl up gently and began to sing. Old Irish lullabies, the kind her mother had taught her when she was small, letting her voice dissolve into the hushed stillness of the night. She told herself she was invisible in this house, that no one ever really saw her, but she was wrong. Evelyn did not know about the camera. She did not know that in a penthouse on the other side of the city, Marcus Castellano sat back in his leather chair, surrounded by glowing screens and armed men, watching every frame of footage from the system he had ordered installed on the very first day she was hired. 4 months. He had watched her for 4 months, watched her lull his daughter to sleep in a language his own grandmother used to sing, watched her hold the baby as if she were her whole world, while he could not even look at his child without seeing the shadow of a faithless wife. And tonight, something in Evelyn's voice, perhaps the faint fracture of loneliness, finally split the ice he had wrapped around his heart for so long. Evelyn did not know that everything was about to change, that when she laid Sophia back in the cradle and turned around, a dark figure was already standing in the doorway, silent, dangerous, watching her as if she were the only thing he could still see clearly inside the darkness of his own life. If you want to know what happens next between this poor nanny and this cold mafia boss, please tap like to support the channel. Do not forget to share this story with anyone you love who enjoys dramatic, emotion-heavy romance. And if you have not subscribed yet, subscribe now and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next episodes. Evelyn froze where she stood, her breath catching hard in her chest. The shadow did not move. It did not speak. It simply stood there, like a statue carved out of darkness itself. Then he came forward. 1 step, then another. And the dim glow from the nightlight finally reached his face. Marcus Castellano. She had seen him a few times over the past 4 months, only in quick flashes. A brief glance in the hallway, the back of him vanishing behind a door, but never this close, never this clear. He was taller than she had imagined, his broad shoulders stretched beneath a perfectly tailored black suit, even though it was nearly 4 in the morning. A square jaw, sharp as a blade, a faint scar cutting across his left eyebrow, but it was his eyes that stole her breath. Black, bottomless, cold enough that she felt the temperature in the room drop by a few degrees. Mr. Castellano. Her voice came out rough, trembling. I am sorry. I did not know you were here. The baby was crying and that song. He cut her off, his voice low, like thunder in the distance. Where did you learn it? Evelyn blinked, thrown by the question. My mother. She swallowed with difficulty. She taught me when I was little. They are Irish lullabies. Something flickered across Marcus's face, too fast for Evelyn to name, but she could have sworn it was pain. He said nothing. He only stood there, and the silence dragged on until it felt suffocating. Then his gaze shifted, slowly, as if every inch cost him something, toward the cradle where Sophia lay. Evelyn watched his jaw tighten, watched his fingers curl slightly into a fist, then loosen again. He looked at his daughter the way a man looks at a ghost, as if that innocent 4-month-old child carried someone else's curse. She looks like her mother, Marcus said, his voice empty of feeling. Yet Evelyn heard the crack underneath. She did not know what drove her to speak. Maybe it was the lack of sleep. Maybe it was the instinct to protect the child she had loved for 4 months. Or maybe she was simply too tired to be afraid. But she has your eyes, Evelyn said, soft but steady, black and deep, exactly the same. Marcus turned back to her, and this time his stare was sharp as a razor. Evelyn felt her heart stumble, waiting for anger, waiting to be dismissed on the spot. No one spoke to Marcus Castellano like that. No one dared. But instead of fury, he only watched her. For a long time. As if he were trying to read every thought in her mind. Then he looked at Sophia again. And Evelyn saw something she had not expected. Longing. To touch. To come closer. And yet held back by something stronger than a wall of steel. 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, Marcus said suddenly, his tone turning cold again. My office. Bring Sophia. Evelyn opened her mouth to ask why. but he had already turned away. His footsteps made no sound on the polished stone, and the darkness swallowed him back into the black hallway. She stood there, alone with a sleeping child and a heart beating wildly, trying to understand what had just happened. Before he disappeared completely, his voice drifted back, so faint she nearly thought she had imagined it. "And Evelyn, thank you for taking care of her." Then he was gone, and Evelyn was left wide-eyed with the realization that for the first time in 4 months, Marcus Castellano had said her name. For the first time, he had spoken a word of thanks. And for the first time, she had seen something beneath the ice, something broken, something waiting to be mended. She did not know what she had just stepped into. She only knew sleep would not come for her tonight, and her life would never be the same again. Evelyn could not sleep. She lay on the narrow fold-out bed, eyes wide open on the ceiling, her mind spinning in circles around the image of those deep black eyes and that low, rough voice that still seemed to echo in her ears. 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, my office. She did not understand why her heart was still racing, why her hands still trembled when she replayed the moment he had said her name. Evelyn, just a name. Yet coming from Marcus Castellano, it carried the weight of a declaration. She turned onto her side, pulled the blanket up to her chest, and the memories came rushing in like a tide she could not hold back. 4 years earlier, she had been sitting beside a hospital bed, holding her mother's thin, brittle hand, listening as the heart monitor slowed, slower, slower, until it became one unbroken line. End-stage lung cancer. 4 years of fighting. 4 years of chemotherapy. 4 years of hope and then despair. And in the end, her mother was gone, leaving Evelyn alone in this world with a mountain of medical debt, $87,000, and a hollowed-out heart. And her father, he had left when Evelyn was 8, disappearing on a winter morning, without a single goodbye, without turning back even once. She could not clearly remember his face anymore. She only remembered the feeling of being abandoned, the feeling of not being good enough to be worth staying for. After her mother died, Evelyn dropped out in her 3rd year of college. There was no money, no time, no strength left for dreaming. She took whatever work a 23-year-old girl without a degree could find, waitressing at a cheap Italian restaurant, paid by the hour, forced to endure wandering hands from drunk customers, cleaning houses for wealthy families, scrubbing toilets and mopping floors, while they looked straight through her as if she did not exist, caring for the elderly in a nursing home, changing diapers, spooning thin porridge into mouths that could no longer remember their own names. Every job was the same in one way. Evelyn was always invisible. She lived in the shadow of other people's lives, doing what no one wanted to do, and vanishing without anyone noticing she had ever been there. Then, 4 months ago, the agency called with an offer so unbelievable she thought it had to be a joke. A nanny position for a wealthy family on Long Island, pay 5 times higher than normal, room and board included, and all she had to do was sign a confidentiality agreement as long as a novel. Evelyn knew something was wrong. Money like that never came without a price. But when she looked at the debt piled up in front of her, and the 17th collection notice that had arrived in a single month, she had no choice left. She put pen to paper without asking one more question, and she stepped into the Castellano estate as if stepping into another world entirely. The pale gray light of dawn slipped through the gap in the curtains when a knock sounded at the door. Evelyn startled upright, realizing she had been awake all night. The door opened, and Maggie walked in carrying a breakfast tray. Maggie, the 58-year-old housekeeper with sharp, knowing eyes and silver hair pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, was the only person in this house who treated Evelyn like a human being instead of a shadow. She set the tray down on the table, then studied Evelyn with a searching look. "You did not sleep," Maggie said. It was not a question. Evelyn started to deny it, but the dark circles beneath her eyes spoke for her. "I heard the boss went into the nursery last night," Maggie went on, her voice dropping lower. The first time in 4 months, Evelyn stayed silent, not knowing what to say. "Listen to me, sweetheart," Maggie said, sitting down on the edge of the bed, her tone turning grave. "Marcus Castellano is not a bad man, but his world is, and people who step into that world do not always walk out whole." She paused, holding Evelyn's gaze. "Be careful, sweetheart. Do not let him see you, if you still want to keep your heart." But Evelyn knew it was already too late. He had seen her, and she was no longer sure she wanted to be invisible again. At exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, Evelyn stood in front of the massive oak door to Marcus's office, Sophia in her arms, her heart pounding so hard she was afraid the baby might feel it. 2 men stood guard outside, Dante and Nico, names she had overheard in passing from the other staff. They watched her with expressions she could not read, then nodded and pushed the door open. Evelyn stepped inside, and her breath caught. The room was so vast it felt like another world. Floor-to-ceiling windows looked out over gardens that seemed to stretch without end. The afternoon sun pouring in and laying down bands of molten gold across the polished hickory floor. Bookshelves rose all the way to the ceiling, packed with worn leather-bound volumes. A black, glossy mahogany desk dominated the space, so large a person could lie full length across it. And everywhere, the air carried the scent of whiskey mixed with old paper and warm wood. This was not an office. This was the den of a king, and Evelyn was only a beggar who had wandered into a palace. Marcus stood when she entered, and the courtesy startled her so much she nearly stopped short. He wore a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. No suit, no tie. He looked a little less frightening than he had the night before. Only a little. Sit. He gestured to the leather chair across from the desk. Evelyn sat, settling Sophia onto her lap, feeling the baby's warm weight like an anchor that kept her from drifting away. Silence lingered. Marcus looked at her, then at Sophia, then back at her again, as if weighing every word before he spoke. "You have worked here for 4 months," he said at last, "but I have never asked where you come from." Evelyn swallowed. "Brooklyn," she answered. "Born and raised. Family." The question cut like a blade into a wound that had never fully closed. Evelyn hesitated, but Marcus's eyes held no judgment, no cruel curiosity, only a simple need to know. And for some reason, she found she could not lie to him. "My mother died 4 years ago. Cancer." Evelyn heard her own voice, flat and steady, as if she were telling someone else's story. "My father left when I was 8. I do not have anyone." Marcus said nothing. He only listened. "My mother fought for 4 years. Evelyn went on, not knowing why she was saying these things to a mafia boss, yet unable to stop. "Chemo, radiation, surgery, then chemo again. I left college in my 3rd year to take care of her. And when she died, she left me $87,000 in hospital bills." This time Marcus's brow tightened slightly, but he still did not interrupt. "I have done every kind of job," Evelyn said, a thin laugh slipping out with no joy in it. "Waitressing, cleaning houses, caring for the elderly. Anything that could earn money to pay the debt. Then the agency called and said there was a job that paid 5 times the usual rate. All I had to do was sign a confidentiality agreement." She looked straight into Marcus's eyes. "I knew something was wrong. Money like that never comes without a price. But I did not have any other choice." A heavy silence poured down over the room. Evelyn waited for contempt, waited for the pitying look she knew too well from wealthy people. But Marcus only sat there, one finger tapping lightly against the desk, his black eyes never leaving her. "You did not ask what I do," he said finally. "You did not ask why secrecy was required, why the pay was so high, why there are guards everywhere." Evelyn shook her head. "I do not need to know. I only need to take care of Sophia." Something flashed in Marcus's eyes, too fast for Evelyn to catch. He stood, came around the desk, and stopped directly in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth rising from his body, close enough to catch the scent of expensive cologne, and the faint trace of whiskey beneath it. "You are an honest woman," Marcus said, his voice low. "That is rare." Evelyn lifted her gaze to him, unsure whether it was praise or a warning. "I am going to tell you a story," Marcus said, and his eyes darkened like a sky before a storm. "About the woman in that photograph." He pointed toward the corner of the room, where a portrait of a beautiful dark-haired woman looked down at them. "About my wife, about Sophia's mother, and about why I cannot look at my daughter." Marcus turned his back to Evelyn and walked to the window, staring out at the garden stretching beyond the glass. The afternoon sunlight fell across his face, sharpening every hard angle and deepening the shadows in his eyes. Evelyn stayed still. Sophia slept soundly in her arms, and Evelyn waited, feeling the weight of what was about to be spoken. "Bianca," Marcus began, his voice like stone grinding over gravel. "I knew her when we were children. Her family and mine have been tied together for generations. We grew up together. We played together. And when we were old enough, we married, as if it were simply the natural order of things." He paused, fingers drifting without thinking to the window frame. 10 years. I loved her for 10 years. I believed I knew her better than anyone in this world." Evelyn did not dare breathe too loudly, afraid of breaking the fragile edge of this moment. "Antonio is my cousin," Marcus continued, and the name left his mouth like a curse. "We grew up like brothers. I trusted him with my life. I put him in charge of part of the business. I let him sit at the table with the most important men. He was family." A bitter laugh escaped him, cold and empty. "And he slept with my wife for 2 years, right under this roof." Evelyn felt her stomach tighten. 3 days before Bianca gave birth to Sophia, I found out everything. Marcus turned, and Evelyn saw the pain on his face as clearly as an open wound. Not by accident. One of my men intercepted messages between them. They had been planning to run. Take half of what was mine. Disappear somewhere I could not reach. And the baby in Bianca's belly? He looked down at Sophia asleep in Evelyn's arms, and his voice caught. They planned to use her as leverage, to demand a ransom, to drain me dry with my own daughter. Evelyn held Sophia closer without meaning to, as if she could protect the baby from the brutal past written into her life. The night I confronted Bianca, Marcus went on, his voice falling into a whisper. She did not deny it. She did not apologize. She only looked at me with eyes like ice and asked what I was going to do, as if I were the guilty one, as if 10 years meant nothing. He drew in a deep breath that trembled on the way out. We fought, I yelled. She yelled, and then she collapsed. Evelyn realized she was holding her own breath. She went into labor that night, Marcus said, lifting a hand to his forehead as if trying to rub the memory away. The doctor said the stress triggered premature delivery. Sophia was born, tiny and fragile, but alive. And Bianca. He stopped, and Evelyn saw his jaw clench so hard the muscle jumped. She hemorrhaged. They could not save her. Silence fell over the room like a massive stone. Evelyn wanted to say something, anything, but she could not find the right words. I stood outside the operating room, Marcus said, his voice hollow, watching my wife die while my daughter was carried out. And the only thing I felt was not grief. It was rage. Rage that she dared to leave me that way. Rage that she betrayed me to her last breath. Rage that when I looked at Sophia, all I could see was Bianca's face and her lies. And Antonio? Evelyn asked, her voice so soft she was not sure she had spoken aloud. Marcus looked at her, and in those black eyes, Evelyn saw something that sent a chill down her spine. Not anger. Something worse. The complete emptiness of a man who has gone beyond every limit. Antonio tried to run to Italy right after Bianca died, Marcus said, calm in a way that was terrifying. He did not make it to the airport. He did not explain. He did not have to. Evelyn understood. She understood far too well. And the most frightening part was that she did not feel the horror she should have felt. Instead, all she saw in front of her was a broken man. A man betrayed by the people he loved most. A man trying to survive in the wreckage of his own life. Now do you understand why I cannot look at her? Marcus asked, and his voice broke. Every time I look at Sophia, I see Bianca. I see the betrayal. I see the night she died, and I do not know how to stop seeing those things. Evelyn looked down at Sophia, that innocent baby sleeping peacefully, unaware of the darkness that had surrounded her arrival. And for the first time, she understood the burden Marcus Castellano carried, understood why he had built a wall of ice around his heart, but she understood something else too. This child deserved to be loved, and maybe, just maybe, she could help this man learn how to love his daughter again. The room sank into silence after Marcus's confession. Evelyn looked at the man standing in front of her, the most powerful in this region, the most dangerous in the underworld, yet right now he looked no different than a lost child caught in the storm of his own making. She rose slowly, Sophia still peaceful in her arms, and walked toward Marcus. He did not step back. He only stood there, black eyes following every move she made, as if she carried something both precious and frightening. Sophia is not Bianca, Evelyn said, her voice gentle but unshakable. She is a part of you, not a copy of anyone, and she needs her father. Marcus swallowed, his throat working hard as if he were trying to force down a stone. I do not know how to be a father, he whispered. My father was a cold man. He only taught me how to hold power and destroy my enemies. I have nothing to give her. You can learn, Evelyn answered. Start now. She took one more step, and Marcus looked down at Sophia as if she were a flame that could burn him at any moment. But this time, he did not turn away. Evelyn saw his hands lift slightly, trembling, then lower again. Lift, lower, like a man standing at the edge of a cliff, wanting to jump, but unable to move. Let me hold her, Marcus said, and it was not an order. It was a plea. Evelyn nodded, her heart beating faster. She moved closer, close enough to feel his breath brush softly through her hair. Put your left hand here, under her head, she guided, gently placing his arm into position. Your right hand supports her back. Hold her steady, but do not squeeze. Marcus's hands shook like leaves. Fingers that had pulled triggers without hesitation, that had signed death sentences without a second of regret, now trembled as they touched the small body of his own daughter. Evelyn transferred Sophia into his arms slowly, carefully, as if she were handing him the most sacred thing in the world, and then Sophia lay against Marcus's chest. The baby did not cry. Instead, she opened her eyes, dark eyes exactly like her father's, and looked up into the face of the man holding her. Marcus went still. Evelyn saw his breath stop, saw his eyes widen, saw something break open in that stare, not breaking in a painful way, breaking like a wall being torn down, letting light pour into a place that had been dark for far too long. "She has my eyes," Marcus whispered, his voice rough. "You were right. She has my eyes." Sophia lifted her tiny hand, small fingers closing around Marcus's little finger, holding tight. Evelyn saw Marcus's jaw tremble, saw his eyes turn red, saw the most powerful man in this city fighting his own tears. "She is so small," Marcus said, his voice splintering, "and I have missed 4 months." "You have a lifetime to make it up," Evelyn answered, her voice catching more than she wanted. Marcus did not take his eyes off Sophia, but he spoke to Evelyn. "Teach me." Still a plea, not a command. "Teach me how to be a father, how to hold her, how to soothe her to sleep, how to look at her without seeing the ghost of the past. You are the only one who has loved her like your own for 4 months. You are the only one who can help me." Evelyn looked at the man in front of her, looked at the baby in his arms, and she knew she could not refuse. Not because he was her employer, but because in this moment, she saw something she never thought she would see in Marcus Castellano. Vulnerability, a yearning to be saved. "I agree," she said. "But you have to promise me one thing." Marcus finally lifted his eyes to her. "What?" "Do not give up," Evelyn said, her voice firm. "No matter how hard it gets, no matter how much it hurts, do not turn your back on her again. Sophia deserves a father, and you deserve to be loved." Marcus watched her for a long moment, as if trying to understand why this poor girl from Brooklyn dared to say such things to him. Then he nodded, slow but final. "I promise." And in that lavish office, amid the scent of whiskey and old books, a promise was laid down. A new door opened. Evelyn did not know what she had just stepped into. She only knew that from this moment on, her life was tied to the man holding his daughter, as if he were afraid she might vanish. And the look in his eyes when he glanced at Evelyn carried something she did not dare name. Everything changed after that afternoon. Marcus Castellano, the man the entire city feared, began coming home at 8 o'clock every night, as steady as a clock. Meetings that used to stretch deep into the night were cut short. Business trips were pushed back. And for the first time in 4 months, the nursery light was no longer lit by Evelyn alone. On the first night, he stood in the doorway, awkward as a guest in his own home, unsure whether to step inside or stay out. Evelyn had to lift her hand and beckon him in. Marcus moved toward the small baby tub, where Sophia sat splashing in the water, her dark eyes fixed on her father with the curious wonder only a child can hold. "How warm should it be?" Marcus asked, his voice stiff, as if he were asking about a business deal. Evelyn smiled and dipped her elbow into the water. "Like this, warm, but not hot. Try it," Marcus did, and the focus on his face as he checked the temperature made Evelyn press her lips together so she would not laugh. This was a man who ran an entire underworld empire, and he was worried about the bathwater for his daughter. The days that followed were even more chaotic. Marcus learned how to support Sophia's head while she bathed, learned how not to let soap get into her eyes, learned how to dry each tiny finger without making her cry. Every step was slow, clumsy, filled with worry. Then came diaper changes. Evelyn would never forget Marcus's face the first time he confronted a dirty diaper. A man who had stared at the most horrifying scenes without blinking now grimaced as if he had stepped into hell itself. But he did not give up. He tried. He failed. He tried again. Until, at last, he could change her without Evelyn having to guide him through every single move. That small victory drew a smile from him. A slight smile, almost unconscious, and Evelyn realized it was the first time she had ever seen Marcus truly smile. In the second week, they moved on to the bottle. Marcus held it as if it were a bomb with a ticking timer. So careful his hands shook when he brought the nipple to Sophia's mouth. Sophia refused, turning her head away, fussing and crying. Marcus looked at Evelyn in panic, as if he had just faced the greatest failure of his life. "Tip the bottle a little more," Evelyn coached, gently adjusting his hand. "And relax. She can feel your tension." Marcus drew a deep breath. His shoulders lowered, and as if by magic, Sophia began to drink. The look in Marcus's eyes as he watched his daughter then held something Evelyn could not name. Maybe astonishment, maybe love, slowly waking up. But the moment Evelyn would remember for the rest of her life was the 15th night. Marcus was trying to fasten the snaps on Sophia's little one-piece sleeper, his large fingers struggling with each tiny button. He managed to close one. It popped open. He tried again. It popped open again. His face tightened in fierce concentration. as if he were solving a life-or-death problem, and Evelyn could not hold it in anymore. She laughed, a clear, bright sound that filled the room, the first real laugh she had let out in this house. Marcus lifted his head, and the way he looked at her made Evelyn's laughter die in her throat. He looked at her as if he had just heard the most beautiful sound in the world, as if her laugh were the only light in a dark room. Those black eyes softened, melted, and in that moment, Evelyn saw a different Marcus. Not a mafia boss, not a cold, untouchable man, only a father learning how to love, and a man looking at her in a way no one ever had. "You have a beautiful laugh," Marcus said, his voice low, unexpectedly gentle. "You should laugh more." Evelyn felt heat rush to her cheeks, and she quickly bent down to help him fasten the remaining snaps. But her heart was racing, and she knew she was stepping into dangerous territory, because she was starting to see Marcus Castellano as more than her employer, more than the father of the baby she cared for. She was starting to see him as a man, and that was more frightening than anything she had ever faced. The nights that followed became a routine neither of them spoke aloud, yet both of them quietly waited for. After Sophia fell sound asleep, after the gentle rhythm of the baby's steady breathing filled the room, Marcus and Evelyn would sit together in the rocking chair by the window, speaking in whispers, as if afraid to wake the child's dreams. Sometimes they talked about Sophia, about her small new milestones, about the way she was starting to recognize her father, lifting her arms toward him, asking to be held. But little by little, their conversations drifted farther, deeper. They began to touch the darker corners both of them had kept hidden. "My grandmother was Irish," Marcus said one night, his voice softening when he spoke of her. "My mother died when I was very young, and my father did not know how to raise a child. He only knew how to teach me to be strong, how to never show weakness, how to crush an enemy before he crushed me. But my grandmother was different. She taught me that real strength is not in a fist, it is in the heart." Evelyn listened, picturing a boy with dark eyes sitting at his grandmother's bedside, hearing fairy tales and Irish lullabies. "She used to sing to me," Marcus continued, his gaze turned toward the window, as if he were looking into the past. "Songs exactly like the ones you sing for Sophia. That is why I came into the nursery that first night. I heard your voice through the camera, and I thought I was hearing my grandmother again." Evelyn felt her heart tighten. "Is she still alive?" Marcus shook his head. "She died when I was 15, and after that, I belonged completely to my father's world. No more lullabies, no more fairy tales, only blood and power." Silence stretched between them. Then Marcus turned to look at her. "And what about you? You told me about the debt, but you have not told me about your mother. What was she like?" Evelyn drew in a slow breath. The question touched a wound she thought had healed, only to find it had simply buried itself deeper. "My mother was the strongest woman I have ever known," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "She raised me alone after my father left. She worked 2 jobs at the same time so I could stay in school, so I could dream. She never complained. She never cried in front of me. At least, I thought she did not." Marcus said nothing. He only listened, with a stillness so complete it felt like respect. "Then she was diagnosed with lung cancer," Evelyn went on, her eyes beginning to burn. 4 years. 4 years we fought. Chemo, radiation, surgery, then chemo again. I left college to take care of her because no one else could. No one else cared." She stopped, swallowing hard. "And I thought if I tried hard enough, if I stayed beside her long enough, she would not leave me. But she still did." Evelyn nodded, tears rolling down her cheeks without her bothering to wipe them away. "One autumn morning, she held my hand, told me she loved me, and then she closed her eyes. And I sat there for 3 hours. I did not call a doctor. I did not call anyone. I just held her hand and sang the lullabies she used to sing to me." Marcus reached out. He hesitated for a single second, then gently laid his hand over Evelyn's. His hand was warm, large, carrying the quiet weight of someone who understood loss. They sat like that in silence. 2 people from different worlds, yet aching in how similar they were. Both of them had lost their mothers. Both of them had been abandoned by their fathers in different ways. Both of them had been alone in this world, searching for a place to belong. "You are not alone anymore," Marcus said, his voice deep and steady. "I know that does not change the past, but you are not alone anymore." Evelyn looked up, and in those dark eyes she saw something she had not expected: sincerity, care, and a deep hunger to connect with someone. In the days that followed, the house began to change, not in grand, obvious ways. In small things only careful eyes would notice. Marcus smiled more often, even if it was only brief. Passing smiles. His voice grew less cold when he spoke to the staff, and he began to greet people, instead of merely nodding and walking past as if they did not exist. Evelyn heard the whispers when she passed through the hallways. "The boss is different," the cook murmured to the server. "I saw him smile at the baby this morning. A real smile." "What is going on with him?" the gardener asked Maggie. "I have worked here 20 years. I have never seen him like this." Maggie did not answer. She only looked toward Evelyn with an expression that held both worry and understanding. And Evelyn knew what she was thinking, that Marcus Castellano's change had something to do with her, that they were stepping into dangerous ground. But Evelyn could not stop. She did not want to stop, because for the first time in 4 years, she no longer felt invisible. That night, Sophia had a fever. Not a high fever. Nothing dangerous. Marcus's private doctor came to check her and confirmed it was only a mild fever from teething. But the baby cried without stopping. Sophia's wails started at 10 o'clock at night, tearing through the mansion's stillness, and nothing could soothe her. Evelyn carried her in slow circles around the room, sang lullabies, rocked her, tried every trick she knew. But Sophia kept crying, cheeks flushed, tears sliding down her soft, round face. And with every broken sob, Evelyn felt her own heart splinter. Marcus appeared in the nursery doorway at 11, still in his dress shirt and slacks, as if he had never intended to sleep. "Let me try," he said, his voice low. Evelyn handed Sophia to him without a word. She was too exhausted to argue, too worried to refuse any help. Marcus pulled his daughter against his chest, one hand supporting her head, the other patting her back in a steady rhythm, and began to pace. He did not sing. He did not speak. He only walked and patted, like a machine that had been programmed to keep going. Yet his presence, the warmth of his body, seemed to calm Sophia at least a little. They took turns all night. Evelyn held Sophia for an hour, then Marcus for an hour. When one of them reached the edge of exhaustion, the other stepped in. No discussion, no planning. They moved together automatically, as if they had been doing this side by side for a lifetime. By 3 in the morning, Sophia started to sleep in short stretches. 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Then she would wake again, crying. By 4, both Evelyn and Marcus looked like ghosts, dark circles under their eyes, shoulders drooping. But neither of them gave up. At 5 in the morning, Sophia finally fell into a real, deep sleep. Evelyn laid her in the crib with the gentlest movements she could manage, holding her breath until she was certain the baby would not wake. Then she turned back, and her legs no longer had the strength to hold her up. She leaned against the wall and slowly slid down until she was sitting on the floor, every bone in her body dissolving with exhaustion. Marcus said nothing. He simply sat down beside her, his back against the wall as well, his shoulder brushing hers. They stayed that way in silence, 2 people tired down to the marrow, yet neither of them wanting to leave. The first light of dawn began to seep through the gap in the curtains, washing the room in a pale, ghost-gray glow. Evelyn could feel the warmth of Marcus's body drifting into her. She could feel the steady rise and fall of his breathing, and she realized she did not want this moment to end. She turned her head, meaning to say something, maybe thank you, maybe good night. But Marcus was turning to look at her too. And suddenly the distance between them was only a few inches. His black eyes in the early light looked different, softer, warmer, and the intensity of the way he watched her made her forget how to breathe. Evelyn saw his gaze drop to her mouth for a single beat, then lift back to her eyes. And she knew what he was thinking. She knew because she was thinking the same thing. Marcus tilted his head, slowly, as if giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. But Evelyn did not move back. She could not. Her heart was pounding wildly, her breaths shallow and quick, and she realized she was leaning toward him, pulled by a force she could not resist. Their mouths were only a breath apart. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Heavy, even. The steady tread of a guard on patrol. Both of them jolted as if shocked, pulling away at the exact same instant. Marcus stood so fast he nearly lost his balance. Evelyn scrambled up too, her face burning as if she had been caught doing something forbidden. "You should go rest," Marcus said, his voice rough and stiff, refusing to meet her eyes. "I will stay and watch Sophia." Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice if she tried to speak. She walked out of the nursery with her heart still racing, her lips still tingling as if they had been kissed, even though the kiss had never happened. She knew they had crossed an invisible line tonight, not with an action, with an intention, with a look, with a few inches of distance that said everything. And she also knew that no matter how they pretended nothing had happened, everything had changed. There was no going back. A week passed after the night Sophia had a fever, and everything between Evelyn and Marcus had shifted in ways they both pretended not to notice. The air in the nursery each evening grew thicker, heavier, as if an invisible cord had been pulled tight between them, and any movement might snap it. Touches began to happen, accidental, and yet not accidental at all. Marcus's hand brushed Evelyn's when they both reached for the bottle, and neither of them pulled away as quickly as they should have. Their shoulders bumped when they stood beside the crib, and Evelyn felt the warmth of him spread into her like a low, smoldering fire. Sometimes, when she lifted her head, she caught Marcus watching her with a look she did not dare name, and both of them would turn away too fast, as if they had been burned. Maggie saw everything. She always saw everything. One afternoon, while Evelyn was in the kitchen preparing a small snack for Sophia, Maggie stepped in and closed the door behind her. Evelyn knew at once what was coming. She had seen Maggie's looks all week, worried and loaded with meaning, impossible to hide. "Sit down, sweetheart," Maggie said, her voice grave. "We need to talk." Evelyn sat across from her, hands clasped together on the table, trying to stay calm even as her heart began to beat faster. "I know you do not want to hear this," Maggie began, her eyes holding Evelyn's. "But I have to say it. I see the way he looks at you, and I see the way you look back." Evelyn opened her mouth to protest, but Maggie lifted a hand to stop her. "Do not deny it. I have lived long enough to know what feelings look like, and what I see between you and Mr. Castellano is not the relationship between an employer and an employee." She paused, drawing in a breath. "Marcus Castellano is not a bad man. I have worked for him for 20 years. I know he has a heart, even if he keeps it buried deep. But sweetheart, loving him has a price." "I do not love him," Evelyn said, and the lie tasted bitter on her tongue. Maggie looked at her with quiet sadness. "Maybe not yet, but you are on your way there. And I need you to understand that his world is not like ours. He has enemies, people who will not hesitate to use anyone he cares about to bring him down. Bianca is dead, sweetheart, and even if she betrayed him, she still died. People who step into Marcus Castellano's life do not always step out whole." Evelyn stayed silent. She knew Maggie was right. She had known from the first day she walked into this house that it was not a place meant for an ordinary girl from Brooklyn. But knowing and feeling were not the same, and her heart refused to listen to her reason. "I will be careful," Evelyn said at last, her voice smaller than she meant it to be. Maggie studied her for a long moment, then let out a sigh. "Careful is not enough. But I know you will not listen." She stood and laid a gentle hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "I only pray that when this ends, you still have your heart in one piece." Then she left, and Evelyn was alone with tangled thoughts and a fear she did not want to admit. That night, Marcus came home later than usual. 11 o'clock passed with no sign of him. Evelyn tried to tell herself she was not worried, that he was only busy with work, that it had nothing to do with her. But she stayed awake anyway. She sat in the nursery beside Sophia's crib, waiting. Near midnight, she heard the familiar footsteps in the hallway, but they did not pass by as they always did. They stopped. Evelyn lifted her head and saw Marcus in the doorway, still in his suit, his tie loosened, black eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her forget how to breathe. He did not speak. He only stood there, leaning against the frame, watching her as if she were the only thing that mattered in this whole house. Evelyn remembered Maggie's warning, loving him has a price. But as she looked into Marcus's eyes tonight, she realized something that terrified her. She was ready to pay it, and that frightened her more than anything else. Marcus stepped into the room, closed the door behind him, and that soft click rang like thunder in the silence. Evelyn rose from the rocking chair, her heart beating so fast she was sure he could hear it. Sophia slept soundly in her crib, untouched by what was happening between the two adults. And Evelyn wished she could be untouched too. "Are you afraid of me?" Marcus asked, his voice low and rough in the dark. It was the first thing he had said to her after a full week of avoiding her, and it struck the very thought Evelyn had been trying not to face. She looked at him, the man standing only a few steps away, yet somehow separated from her by an entire world. In the dim nightlight, his face was half shadow, half light, and those black eyes were fixed on her with a hunger he no longer tried to hide. "Yes," Evelyn whispered, and the honesty in her own voice startled her. "I am afraid of you." Marcus frowned. A flash of pain crossed his face as if she had driven a knife into his chest. "But not for the reasons you think," Evelyn went on, her voice trembling slightly. "I am not afraid you will hurt me physically. I am not afraid of your world, even though I know I should be." She paused, swallowing hard. "I am afraid of what you make me feel." Marcus went still, and Evelyn saw his chest rise as he drew in a deep breath. "What do you feel? Like I am falling?" Evelyn whispered. "Falling with nothing to hold on to. falling while knowing that when I hit the ground, I will break apart. And still I cannot stop. The silence stretched like an entire century. Then Marcus began to move toward her, slowly, one step at a time, like a predator closing in on its prey, yet also like a man walking to the edge of his own cliff. Evelyn did not step back. She could not. Her feet felt nailed to the floor, and all she could do was watch him come closer, and closer, and closer, until he stood directly in front of her, so near she could count every eyelash. "I tried to stay away from you," Marcus said, his voice like gravel crushed against stone. "All week, I have tried not to think about you, not to look at you, not to be near you, but you are everywhere. In my head, in my dreams, in every corner of this house." "Marcus, Evelyn started, but he lifted a hand, his fingertip touching her lips, and she fell silent. "If I kiss you now," he said, his voice raw, "I will not be able to stop. Do you understand? I will not be able to stop. And then you will belong to me, completely. There will be no going back." Evelyn looked into those deep black eyes and saw the fire burning inside them, saw warning and promise living in the same breath. She knew she should pull away, should say no, should remember Maggie's warning, but instead, she heard her own voice whisper words she had never planned. "Then do not stop." Marcus closed his eyes for a single moment, as if holding himself back one last time. Then he bent down, and his mouth met hers. The first kiss was gentler than she expected. Only a soft touch, like a butterfly landing on a flower, as if Marcus were asking a question he needed her to answer. Evelyn answered. She tilted her head, parted her lips to meet him, and that was all Marcus needed. In the blink of an eye, the kiss shifted from gentle to hungry. His hand slid into her hair, pulling her closer. Evelyn clutched the lapel of his jacket as if she were afraid she might collapse. She tasted whiskey on his mouth, felt the rough scrape of his stubble against her cheek, and she thought that if the world ended right then, she would not care. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Marcus rested his forehead against hers, eyes still closed, and Evelyn felt his hot breath spill across her lips. "This is a mistake," Marcus whispered, but he did not let her go. "You deserve better than this, better than me." Evelyn lifted her hand and touched his cheek, feeling the tension beneath her fingers. "Maybe," she said, "but I do not want anything else." Marcus opened his eyes and looked at her with an expression Evelyn could not read. Then he took her hand without a word and led her out of the nursery, down the dark hallway, to his bedroom at the far end. That night, they did nothing more than lie beside each other on Marcus's enormous bed. He held her from behind, one arm wrapped around her waist, his face buried in her hair. Evelyn felt the steady beat of his heart against her back, felt the warmth of his body surrounding her, and for the first time in 4 years, she felt safe. She felt as if she belonged. She fell asleep in the arms of the most dangerous Mafia boss in the city, and that sleep was the deepest she had ever known. Morning sunlight slipped through the gap in the curtains and woke Evelyn, and it took her a few seconds to understand where she was. The bed was impossibly wide. The sheets were smooth silk. The faint scent of expensive men's cologne lingered everywhere. Marcus's bedroom. She lay alone. The space beside her was already cold, but the mattress still held the shallow impression of where he had been. Evelyn sat up, pulling the blanket to her chest even though she was still fully dressed, and looked around the luxurious room she had never stepped into until last night. Everything was costly. The paintings on the walls, the thick rug at the foot of the bed. Yet the room felt cold and empty, like the man who owned it. She had crossed a line between employer and employee, between safety and danger, between reason and the heart, and she did not know if she could go back, or if she even wanted to. Maggie was waiting when she came downstairs, and the housekeeper's eyes told Evelyn everything. Maggie knew where Evelyn had slept, but she said nothing. She only handed Evelyn a cup of hot coffee and told her Marcus had left early that morning, called away to handle something urgent. 3 days. Marcus was gone for 3 days. Evelyn cared for Sophia as usual, but her mind would not rest. She asked Maggie. She asked Dante. No one gave her a real answer. Only headshakes, avoided eyes, and the same line repeated like a refrain. The boss's business. Nothing to worry about. But Evelyn saw the tension in the way the guards moved. She saw the number of patrols double. She saw Maggie standing at the window, staring out with worry every time she heard a car. Something was happening. Something dangerous. On the second day, Evelyn overheard Dante speaking to Nico in the hallway. The Moreno family. 2 words whispered like a curse. They are starting a war. Burning warehouses. Hitting our men. Evelyn slipped back into the shadows, her heart racing. And for the first time, she truly understood what Marcus's world was made of. Not expensive suits and lavish parties. Blood. Guns. Death waiting around every corner. On the third night, she could not sleep. She lay in her room staring at the ceiling, praying for Marcus's safety even though she did not know who she was praying to. 1 in the morning passed. 2. Then she heard a car outside. A door shutting. Heavy footsteps on the stone floor. Evelyn sprang up, rushed into the hallway, and saw Marcus coming up the stairs. He looked exhausted. Stubble darkened his jaw. Shadows sat under his eyes. His tie hung loose. But what made Evelyn go still was the red smear on the collar of his white shirt. Blood, soaked from his neck down toward his shoulder. So fresh it still shone under the lights. Marcus stopped when he saw her, and for a moment, he only stared at her with weary, guarded eyes, as if waiting for her to scream, waiting for her to turn and run. "Not mine," he said, his voice rough from lack of sleep. "The blood is not mine." Evelyn stood there, looking at the man in front of her with someone else's blood on his shirt, and she knew this was the moment that would decide everything. She could run. She could pack her things tonight and never return. She could go back to her normal life, safe, invisible, but when she looked into Marcus's eyes, she did not see a monster. She saw a man who had done what needed to be done to protect his world, and maybe to protect her. Evelyn moved toward him, 1 step at a time, until she stood directly in front of him. She lifted her hand to his cheek, feeling the roughness of his beard and the tightness in his jaw. He did not move, as if he feared that any motion might make her disappear. "You need to shower," Evelyn said, her voice calmer than she expected it to be. "And you need to rest." Marcus stared at her, surprise plain on his exhausted face. "You did not run." Evelyn shook her head. A small smile touched her mouth, even though she did not understand why she was smiling at a moment like this. "I told you already. I am not afraid for the reasons you think." And in that moment, standing in the hallway, with the sharp smell of blood in the air, and Marcus watching her as if she were a miracle, Evelyn knew she had made her choice. She chose to stay. She chose him. She chose the darkness along with the light. And whatever that meant, she would not turn back. Evelyn led Marcus to his room, pushed him down onto the edge of the bed, then went to get a warm, damp cloth. When she came back, Marcus was still sitting there, head bowed, hands hanging loosely between his knees, looking like a man collapsing from the inside out. She knelt in front of him, gently unfastened the buttons of his blood-stained shirt, and began wiping the dried blood from his neck. Marcus did not resist. He did not speak. He sat as still as a statue. But when Evelyn's fingers brushed his shoulder, she felt the tremor beneath his skin, as if something had been trapped too long and was now struggling to break free. "You should leave," Marcus said suddenly, his voice rough and splintered. "You should run from here, from me, and never come back." Evelyn's hands stilled. She looked up at his face. He still would not look at her. His eyes stared into the empty space in front of him. "Why?" "Because I kill people, Evelyn," Marcus said, and this time, he lifted his head. He looked straight into her eyes with a pain so sharp it felt cruel. "I kill people. I ruin everything I touch. My mother died giving birth to me. My grandmother died after I entered this world. Bianca, even though she betrayed me, still died because of me." He drew in a harsh breath. "And tonight I watched a man beg for his life while his blood ran through my fingers, and I felt nothing. No regret, no disgust, only emptiness." Evelyn did not pull back. She set the cloth down on the floor. Then she raised both hands, cupped Marcus's face, and forced him to look at her. He blinked, startled by her boldness, but he did not move away. "You feel something," Evelyn said, her voice soft but firm. "If you did not, you would not be here, telling me these things with a face like you are being torn apart from the inside." Marcus closed his eyes. When he opened them, something in him had cracked. "Do you want the truth?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Do you want to know who I really am?" Evelyn nodded, even though she was not sure she was ready. "I have watched you through the cameras for 4 months, Marcus said, and the confession dropped between them like a stone. "From the first night you stepped into this house, every night, I sat in my office, watching you sing Sophia to sleep, watching you hold my daughter as if she were yours, watching you move through the darkness like a beautiful ghost I could not touch." Evelyn felt the blood in her body go cold, but she did not let go of him. "Why? At first, I told myself it was security," Marcus went on, his voice cutting into himself like a blade, "because I did not trust anyone after Bianca. But then I realized the truth. I am obsessed with you, Evelyn, obsessed with the way you laugh, the way you sing, the way you look into the dark as if you are searching for someone. I memorized every movement you make, every expression on your face, every shade in your voice." He caught her wrists, holding them tight but not hurting her. I wanted to lock you in this house forever, to keep you for myself, so no one else could see you, so no one else could touch you. He looked at her with wild eyes, and that should make you run. That should make you afraid, because that is not love. That is possession from a madman. Silence fell over the room. Evelyn felt her heart pounding wildly. She felt the tremor in Marcus's hands around her wrists. His confession should have terrified her. It should have made her stand up and run out of this room, out of this house, and never come back. But when she looked into Marcus's eyes, she did not see a monster. She saw a man drowning, trying to push her away so she would not drown with him. "What do you think I want?" Evelyn whispered. "Do you think I am here for money? Because I have no choice." She lifted a hand and pressed it to his chest, where his heart was racing. "I have been free for 4 years, Marcus. Free, and so lonely that there were nights I wished I would not wake up in the morning." Her voice broke. "You are the first person who has seen me. Really seen me. Not the waitress, not the cleaner, not the nanny. Me." "Evelyn." Marcus stared at her as if she had said something impossible. "You do not understand. I will destroy you." "Maybe," Evelyn said, and she tilted her head and brushed her mouth to his, gentle as a breath. "But I have been broken for a long time, and maybe our broken pieces can fit together." Marcus watched her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her so tight she could barely breathe, burying his face in her hair. "You are the only light in my darkness," he whispered, "and I am afraid I will put you out." Evelyn held him back, feeling his body shaking, and whispered into his ear, "Then do not. Let me stay with you. In the dark and in the light, in all of it." Marcus loosened his hold on Evelyn, only enough to look into her eyes. His face still carried the marks of exhaustion, of blood and violence. Yet in those deep black eyes something had shifted, as if the last layer of ice had finally melted, revealing the fire beneath it that he had kept hidden for far too long. "Do you understand what you are saying?" Marcus asked, his voice low and rough. "Do you understand what it means to stay with me?" Evelyn nodded, even though she was not entirely sure she did. She only knew that when she looked at Marcus, she did not see the terrifying Mafia boss everyone whispered about. She saw a lonely, broken man, starving to be loved even though he did not know how to accept it. "If you stay," Marcus said slowly, as if weighing every word, "there is no going back. You will not be a nanny anymore, not an employee. You will be mine, completely. I will not share you with anyone. I will not let anyone touch you. I will not allow you to leave my life." He caught her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "That is not a promise. That is the truth. I am possessive, Evelyn. I do not know how to love in a normal way. Once you belong to me, you will belong to me forever." Evelyn heard every word, felt their weight settle on her chest. This was not a romantic confession from the movies she had watched. This was a warning, a last chance to turn back. But when she thought of the life she had lived before this house, 4 years drifting from one job to the next, nights alone in a damp rented room, wondering if anyone in the world would notice if she disappeared, she knew what her answer was. "For 4 years, Evelyn said, her voice trembling slightly but not weak. "I have been free. Free to go anywhere, do anything, bound to no one. And do you know what I felt?" She pressed a hand to her own chest. "Empty. Lonely enough that there were nights I wished I did not exist. Not that I wanted to die, only that I had never been born. Because there was no one to remember me, no one to cry for me, no one my life mattered to." Marcus listened, and Evelyn saw his jaw tighten as she spoke. "Then I came here," she went on, "and for the first time, someone saw me. Not past me, not through me like I was air, really saw me. You saw me through the cameras every night when I thought I was invisible. You saw me when no one else even bothered to look." She lifted her hand and touched his cheek. "So if you want to keep me, then keep me. If you want me to belong to you, then I agree. Because for the first time in my life, I want to belong to someone, and that someone is you." Marcus looked at her, and in that moment every defense in his face fell away. He pulled her into a kiss that was deep, hungry, and desperate, as if she were oxygen and he was drowning. When they finally broke apart, both of them were breathing hard. Marcus reached into his pocket and drew out a small velvet box. "This belonged to my grandmother," he said, opening it to reveal a slender silver ring with a small blue stone set in the center. "She wore it her whole life, and before she died, she told me to give it to the woman who made me want to become better." He lifted the ring out and took Evelyn's left hand. "I have kept it for 20 years, believing I would never find someone worthy, until I met you." Evelyn stared at the ring, then at Marcus, her eyes burning. "This is not a wedding ring," Marcus said as he slid it onto her finger. "This is a promise that you belong to me, that I will protect you at any cost, that from this moment on, you are my family." The ring fit Evelyn's finger perfectly, as if it had been made for her alone. She looked down at the blue stone, catching the dim light, and felt tears spill down her cheeks. "I belong to you," she whispered, "and you belong to me." Marcus pulled her into his arms again, holding her tight as if afraid she might vanish. And in that room, between the smell of blood and the scent of cologne, between darkness and light, two broken people found each other, chose each other, belonged to each other. A week after the night Marcus slipped his grandmother's ring onto Evelyn's hand was a week she would remember for the rest of her life as the happiest days she had ever known. She moved her things into Marcus's room. No more narrow fold-out bed in the servants' quarters. Now there was a massive bed with silk sheets, and the arms of the man she loved wrapped around her every night. Sophia was moved into the room next door. The connecting door stayed open, always, so Evelyn could hear the smallest sound from the baby. They became a family in the truest sense. They ate breakfast together. Marcus learned to feed Sophia her cereal, while Evelyn giggled, watching a Mafia boss struggle with a spoon so tiny it looked ridiculous in his hand. And every night they lay beside each other, telling stories about the past, about the future, about dreams both of them had believed were gone forever. But happiness in Marcus Castellano's world never lasted. Evelyn began to notice the signs on the fourth day. Marcus was more tense. His phone rang without end. Private meetings behind his office door stretched late into the night. Dante and Nico stayed closer to her, no longer keeping their old distance, but always within sight no matter where she went in the house. The number of guards on patrol doubled, then tripled, and Evelyn began to see guns carried openly instead of hidden beneath jackets. "What is happening?" she asked Marcus on the sixth night, when he lay beside her but stared at the ceiling with his eyes wide open. "Nothing you need to worry about," he answered, but the way he pulled her closer, held her tighter, said the opposite. Evelyn did not press. She had learned there were parts of Marcus's life she was not meant to touch, shadows he wanted to keep her far from, but she could not ignore the unease growing in her chest, the feeling that something was coming, like a storm gathering on the horizon. On the seventh night, the storm arrived. An internal security breach, aided by a traitor within the perimeter guards, disabled the silent alarms and the motion sensors on the north wing. At 2 a.m, Evelyn was asleep in Marcus's arms when the sound of shattering glass ripped through the silence as the hit squad used the storm's cover to scale the north balcony. She jolted awake, heart hammering, and saw Marcus already sitting up, his hand pulling a gun from the bedside drawer she had never known was there. "Stay in the room," Marcus ordered, his voice cold and sharp as a blade. "Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone except me or Dante. Do you understand?" Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. Marcus bent down and kissed her forehead, quick but desperate. "Protect Sophia. I will come back." Then he ran out, his shadow vanishing into the dark hallway, and Evelyn heard gunfire erupt from downstairs. She did not let herself be afraid. Not now. She jumped out of bed and ran to the next room, where Sophia was starting to fuss from the noise. Evelyn scooped her up, held her tight to her chest, and rushed back into Marcus's room, locking the door with shaking hands. The shots kept coming, mixed with shouting and the heavy pound of running feet. Evelyn backed into the darkest corner of the room, behind the massive wardrobe, and sank to the floor with her back against the wall, Sophia in her arms. The baby began to cry louder, and panic surged through Evelyn. She pressed her hand over Sophia's mouth, gently but firmly, muffling the sound. "Shh, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Quiet. You have to be quiet." Sophia stared at her with wide black eyes full of fear, as if she could feel Evelyn's terror, and Evelyn began to sing, barely above a breath, Irish lullabies her mother had once sung, to calm the baby, to calm herself. The gunfire continued. 1 shot, 2, then a burst of automatic fire that made the walls tremble. Evelyn heard more glass breaking, objects crashing, and a cry of pain that cut off too suddenly. She clutched Sophia tighter, eyes squeezed shut, and she prayed for Marcus to be safe, prayed for this nightmare to end, prayed for them to survive the night. Time crawled like torture. Every second stretched into an hour. Every gunshot felt like a knife driving into her heart. Sophia finally grew quiet, maybe exhausted from crying, maybe sensing that now was not the time to make noise. Evelyn sat in the darkness, trembling from head to toe, and waited. Then silence, sudden and absolute. No more gunfire, no more shouting, only a stillness more terrifying than violence itself. Evelyn did not dare breathe, did not dare move. She only sat there and listened. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Slow, heavy, coming closer to the bedroom door. Evelyn held Sophia even tighter, her heart trying to break out of her ribs. Then a knock came, and Marcus's voice, tense but unmistakably his. "Evelyn, open the door." "It is me." Evelyn lunged for the door, hands shaking so badly she had to try twice before the lock finally gave. The door swung open, and Marcus stood there. Blood speckled his face. His shirt was torn at the shoulder, but he was alive. He was alive. Evelyn did not even have time to speak. Marcus stepped inside, slammed the door shut, and pulled her and Sophia into his arms. He held them so tightly Evelyn could barely breathe, but she did not complain. She only needed to feel that he was real, that he was still here, that the nightmare was over. 6 gunmen, Marcus said into her hair, his voice rough with exhaustion. The Moreno family sent 6 gunmen here. They've been neutralized. Dante is holding the only survivor for questioning. Evelyn trembled in his hold. "Why?" she asked, even though she knew the answer would not be something she wanted to hear. "Why did they attack?" Marcus was silent for a long time, and that silence weighed more than any words he could have given her. Then he let her go, set his hands on her shoulders, and looked straight into her eyes with an expression full of pain. "They came because of you, Evelyn." She did not understand. She could not understand. "Because of me. But why? I am only the nanny. I do not know anything about your business. I do not know anything about the Moreno family." Dante revealed that the traitor they captured had leaked information to the Morenos. They hadn't just reported our movements. They told the Morenos that the new nanny had been seen searching Bianca's old study and had finally secured the boss's complete trust, leading them to believe Marcus had finally shared Bianca's hidden secrets with her. Marcus did not answer right away. He took Sophia from her arms, carried the baby into the next room, and laid her in the crib. Then he came back, took Evelyn by the hand, and guided her to sit on the edge of the bed. In the faint light of dawn beginning to rise, his face looked 10 years older. "Wait until morning," he said. "I will explain everything." The next morning, Dante brought the news. Evelyn sat in Marcus's office, her hands still trembling, and listened as the guard laid out what they had pulled from one of the gunmen before he died. Every word landed like a hammer to her chest. "The Moreno family officially activated the bounty we had been hearing rumors of," Dante said, calm but grave. $5 million to take Evelyn Harper alive. Evelyn felt the blood in her veins turn to ice. 5 million. But why? Marcus sat across from her, his face like stone. "Bianca," he said, and the name sounded like a curse. Before she died, Bianca gathered evidence on the Mafia families in this region. Documents that could destroy not only the Moreno family, but many other families as well. She hid them somewhere, and no one knows where. Evelyn shook her head, lost. "But what does that have to do with me?" "You have lived in this house for 4 months, Marcus said, bitterness cutting through his voice. 4 months in Sophia's room, in rooms Bianca once lived in. The Moreno family believes you may have found something, seen something, heard something. They believe you know where Bianca hid the evidence." "But I do not know anything," Evelyn cried, springing to her feet, panic spilling into her voice. "I only take care of Sophia. I did not search for anything. I did not see anything. I do not know anything about any evidence." Marcus stood, came to her, and gripped her shoulders. "I know," he said, and the pain in his eyes broke Evelyn's heart. "I know you do not know anything, but it does not matter." "It does not matter." Evelyn stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. "No," Marcus said, shaking his head, his jaw tightening. "What matters is that they believe you do. $5 million, Evelyn. That is enough money to buy anyone. Enough to make even the most loyal men hesitate. Enough to bring every bounty hunter, every desperate man, every enemy I have ever made, right to my door." Evelyn felt her knees go weak. She sank into the chair, eyes fixed on nothing, trying to make sense of what she had just heard. She had thought she had accepted Marcus's world. She had thought she was ready to face the darkness. But this, to become a target, to become prey, hunted with a price of $5 million, this was beyond anything she had imagined. "So what now?" she asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Marcus dropped to his knees in front of her, took her hands, and looked up at her with an expression that was both determined and broken. "Now," he said, "I have to make the hardest decision of my life, and you are going to hate me for it. You and Sophia have to leave," Marcus said, and the words hit Evelyn's heart like bullets. "Tomorrow, I have prepared everything. New identities, a new house, money, all of it ready. Dante will take you both somewhere safe." Evelyn shot to her feet, the chair crashing to the floor with a loud bang. "No," she said, her voice shaking but hard. "You cannot do this. You cannot send us away." "This is not sending you away," Marcus said, rising to face her, his face like stone, but his eyes breaking apart. "This is protecting you. Protecting Sophia by pushing us out of your life," Evelyn cried, tears beginning to stream down her cheeks. "You said she was family. You said I belonged to you. You promised. And I am keeping that promise," Marcus shouted back. And for the first time, Evelyn saw him lose control. "I promised I would protect you, and the only way I can do that now is to make you leave." They stood facing each other, two people in pain, in anger, trying to claw their way out of a situation with no exit. Evelyn felt her chest tighten until the air itself became hard to breathe. "Then we fight together," she said, her voice breaking. "You have an army. You have money. You have power. We can go against them." Marcus shook his head, and the desperation on his face made Evelyn want to scream. $5 million, Evelyn. Do you not understand? That kind of money is enough to buy even the men I trust most. Enough to turn anyone in this house into a traitor. When you are here, you are the target. And I cannot fight the Morenos while worrying about you every second of every minute. He gripped her shoulders, his voice cracking. "I cannot watch you die, Evelyn. I cannot. I lost Bianca, even though she betrayed me. I still had to watch her die. I will not survive if it happens to you." Evelyn looked into his eyes and saw real fear beneath the hard surface. And she understood. She understood this was not abandonment. It was sacrifice. It was the only way Marcus knew how to love her, how to protect her, even though it was tearing him apart from the inside. But understanding was not the same as accepting. "You are tearing my heart apart," Evelyn whispered, tears spilling without end. "Under the name of protecting me, you are destroying me." Marcus closed his eyes. When he opened them, Evelyn saw tears gathered in those black eyes. Slowly, he dropped to one knee in front of her, one knee touching the floor, and he took her hand in his. The most powerful Mafia boss in the city was kneeling before a poor girl from Brooklyn, and the image was beautiful in a way that hurt. "I love you," Marcus said, his voice rough. "I love you more than I ever thought I could love anyone. So much it frightens me, so much that I will let you go if it means you get to live." He lifted her hand to his mouth and kissed the ring, his grandmother's ring still on her finger. "So I have to let you go. Not because I do not want you, because I want you too much. I want you alive. I want you happy, even if that means you do not have me." Evelyn crumpled, her knees hitting the floor, and she wrapped her arms around Marcus, crying into his shoulder like she had never cried before. He held her back, his body shaking, and she felt his hot tears fall into her hair. They clung to each other on the office floor, two broken people, crying for what they had and for what they were about to lose. Their last night was the longest night of Evelyn's life. They lay on the bed, holding each other so tightly it felt like they were trying to fuse into one body. No one slept. They only lay there in the dark, listening to each other's heartbeat, trying to memorize every feeling, every breath, every moment. Evelyn cried until she had no tears left, and then she lay still with her head on Marcus's chest, listening to his heart like a sad song. Marcus said nothing. He only held her, his hand stroking her hair again and again, as if afraid that if he stopped, she would disappear. Morning came too fast, cruel the way everything in this world seemed to be. Evelyn stood beside a sleek black car, Sophia in her arms, a small suitcase at her feet. She did not take much, only a few changes of clothes, and the ring still on her finger. Before they left the bedroom, Marcus had slipped a phone into her pocket, encrypted and untraceable, with a single number programmed into it. "If you need anything," he had said, "anything, money, protection, anything at all, just call." But he did not come outside to see her off. He stood at the office window, his figure dark behind the glass, watching her step into the car. Evelyn turned and looked up. He was there. She lifted her hand, a goodbye, a silent "I love you," a promise she would never forget. Marcus did not lift his hand back. He only stood there, motionless as stone, and Evelyn understood. If he moved, he would break. If he raised his hand, he would run down and pull her back. So he stayed still, watching her go, destroying himself from the inside. The car began to roll forward, and Evelyn did not look back again. She could not. She held Sophia close to her chest, stared straight ahead, and let the tears fall freely. Behind her, the house grew smaller, and the man she loved vanished from sight, but not from her heart. Not ever. Portugal welcomed Evelyn with bright golden sun and the hush of ocean waves. a gentle music that never seemed to stop. The house Marcus had prepared for her sat on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic, white walls gleaming, a garden full of flowers, and every morning she could watch the sunrise blush pink across the endless water. Paradise. Anyone else would have called it paradise, but to Evelyn, it was only another beautiful prison, a foreign place where she did not belong, and every day that passed felt like a punishment. She woke each morning with a hollow ache in her chest, dried tracks of tears on her pillow, and Marcus's name echoing in her mind like a chorus she could not silence. 3 months passed, slow and cruel as wounds that refused to heal. Evelyn tried to build a new life for herself and Sophia. She took the baby for walks on the beach every morning, bare feet on warm sand, listening to Sophia laugh when the waves touched her tiny toes. She learned to cook local dishes. She learned a few Portuguese phrases, just enough to buy groceries at the market. She tried to smile at the friendly neighbors. But every night, when Sophia was asleep, she sat by the window staring out at the Black Sea and she cried. She cried for the man she loved. She cried for the life she had lost. She cried for the loneliness that was eating her from the inside. Every week, her phone received a message. Just one word. Safe. No questions. No, I miss you. Only confirmation that Marcus was still alive. Evelyn read that message hundreds of times, touching the screen as if she could reach him through those cold letters. She never replied. She did not know what to say. Safe. The word was comfort, and a knife at the same time, because it reminded her that he was still there, still thinking of her, and yet could not be with her. Sophia was 9 months old now. She crawled all over the house. She babbled her first sounds. One morning, while Evelyn was feeding her breakfast, Sophia looked up at her with dark eyes exactly like her father's, and made a sound that squeezed Evelyn's heart tight. Papa, clear and certain. Papa. Evelyn dropped the spoon, tears spilling without control. The baby was calling for her father, a father she would not be able to meet, a father on the other side of the world who might never know his daughter had spoken her first word. Evelyn pulled Sophia into her arms, cried into the baby's soft hair, and whispered useless apologies to a child too young to understand. In the nights that followed, the longing became unbearable. Evelyn lay in bed clutching one of Marcus's shirts she had secretly brought with her, breathing in the scent that was slowly fading, trying to remember what it had felt like to be held in his arms. She dreamed of him every night, dreams so vivid that when she woke, it took her seconds to remember where she was, that he was not beside her, that it had all been an illusion. Then, one afternoon near the end of the 3rd month, when Evelyn returned home after taking Sophia to a routine checkup, she saw a figure sitting on the porch. Her heart missed a beat, hope and fear twisting together. But as she drew closer, she realized it was not Marcus. It was Maggie. The older housekeeper sat there, her face worn from a long flight, and her eyes carried something that turned Evelyn's blood cold. Maggie, Evelyn breathed, her voice shaking. Maggie stood, took Evelyn's hand, and spoke words Evelyn would never forget. He is dying, sweetheart. Not in his body, in his soul. After you left, he destroyed the Moreno family, ended the war, wiped out every threat, but he did not call you home. Instead, he drinks every day. He does not eat. He does not sleep. And he sits for hours staring at the empty nursery camera like a madman. Maggie tightened her grip on Evelyn's hand. He thinks he does not deserve you back. He thinks you are happier without him. But I have watched the two of you, and I know you are both fading away. Evelyn stood there, her heart pounding wildly, and she knew what she had to do. The flight from Portugal to New York lasted 8 hours, but for Evelyn it felt like an entire lifetime. She sat on the plane with Sophia asleep in her arms and stared out the window at the endless blue sky. Every minute that passed felt like torture. Every second was a battle between hope and fear. She did not know what she would find when she returned to the Castellano estate. She did not know how Marcus would react when he saw her. She did not know whether he would send her away again. But she knew one thing with certainty. She could not live one more day without trying. When the car stopped at the gates, Evelyn saw the change immediately. The garden that had once been tended with such care was now wilted and wild, weeds rising to her knees. The flowers Maggie had once been proud of, dried and dead in their pots. The guards stared at her in shock when she stepped out with Sophia in her arms, as if they were seeing a ghost come back from the past. No one stopped her. No one spoke. They only stood there in silence and watched her walk by, as if afraid that if they made a sound, she would vanish. Maggie had warned Evelyn about Marcus's condition, but nothing could have prepared her for what she saw in his office. The curtains were drawn tight. The room was sunk in darkness, even though the morning outside was bright. Whiskey bottles lay everywhere. On the desk, on the floor, on the chairs. Papers were piled in heaps no one had touched, and the smell of alcohol mixed with dampness into the scent of despair. In the middle of all that wreckage, Marcus sat in the leather chair behind his desk, head bowed, a bottle hanging loose in his hand. Evelyn almost did not recognize him. The man in front of her was no longer the powerful Mafia boss she had known. His beard was long and tangled. His hair stood up in a mess, uncombed. He was so thin, his cheekbones jutted sharply beneath his skin. Deep shadows under his eyes said he had not slept in days, maybe weeks. On the desk, directly in front of him, was a printed photograph of Evelyn and Sophia in Portugal, taken from far away, clearly from someone Marcus had sent to watch them, to make sure they were safe. He had still been watching her, still protecting her from a distance, still loving her in the only way he knew. "Marcus," Evelyn said, her voice shaking. He lifted his head. His bloodshot eyes widened when he saw her, but instead of joy or surprise, Evelyn saw confusion and pain on his face. Marcus blinked, shaking his head as if trying to drive away an illusion. "You are not real," he whispered, his voice hoarse with alcohol and sleeplessness. "This is a hallucination. I see you every night in my dreams, and every morning I wake up, you disappear. You are not real." Evelyn moved closer, her heart breaking as she looked at him like this. She set Sophia down on the floor, and the baby began to crawl toward her father with a child's simple curiosity. Marcus looked at his daughter, then looked at Evelyn, and still he did not believe. "I am real, Marcus," Evelyn said, her voice thick with tears. "I am here. I came back." Right then, Sophia reached Marcus's leg, tugged at the fabric of his pant leg, and tipped her head up to stare at him with wide, dark eyes. Then she said the word she had learned through 3 months of separation. "Papa." Clear, bright, full of love. "Papa." Marcus went rigid. His body began to shake, and Evelyn saw something she never thought she would witness. Tears. They spilled down the hollow planes of a Mafia boss's face, falling without control. He bent down, lifted Sophia with trembling hands, pulled her against his chest, and he cried. He cried like a child who had been lost too long and finally found the way home. He cried like a man who had locked himself in hell and suddenly saw light. Evelyn rushed to them, dropped to her knees beside the chair, and wrapped her arms around both father and daughter. Marcus held Sophia with one arm, and with the other he pulled Evelyn into him, and they stayed like that, 3 broken people clinging to each other, crying in one another's arms, in a dark office littered with whiskey bottles and pain. "I am sorry," Marcus whispered into Evelyn's hair, his voice shattered. "I am sorry I pushed you away. Sorry I thought I knew what was best for you. Sorry I hurt you. I thought if you left, you would be safe. You would be happy. You would have a better life without me. But without you," his voice caught, "without you and Sophia, I die, Evelyn. Every day, I die a little more." Evelyn held him tighter, her tears blending with his. "Me too," she whispered. "So never do that again. Never push me away in the name of protecting me. If there is danger, we face it together. If there are enemies, we fight them together. We are one. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded, his eyes still red. But now there was something else inside them. Hope. Life. "From now on, we are partners," he said, his voice steady even as it still shook. "Every decision, we make together. I will never push you away again. Never." Evelyn looked into his eyes, saw the truth there, and she knew this time would be different. They had walked through hell, almost lost each other, and learned the most painful lesson of love. That sometimes protecting someone does not mean pushing them away. It means holding them close, and never letting go. On the first night after they were reunited, they lay beside each other in the familiar bed, Sophia sleeping deeply in the crib nearby. Evelyn rested her head on Marcus's chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and it felt like a dream. She was afraid that if she closed her eyes, she would wake up and everything would be gone. Marcus seemed to understand, because he held her tighter, as if he feared the same thing. "There is something I want to give you," Marcus said suddenly, his voice low and warm in the dark. He reached into the bedside drawer, the same one where Evelyn had once seen him keep a gun, and pulled out a small velvet box hidden deep within a secret compartment. Evelyn's heart missed a beat when Marcus opened it, revealing a diamond ring glittering in the moonlight slipping through the curtains. Not his grandmother's ring, the one she was still wearing. This was a different ring, delicate and exquisite, with a clear diamond like a frozen tear. "I bought this ring 2 days after you left," Marcus said, and his voice trembled. 2 days. Only 2 days. And I knew I had made the biggest mistake of my life. I bought it and kept it with me every day, every night, as a reminder of what I had lost. He lifted the ring, his dark eyes holding hers. "Evelyn Harper, You brought light into my darkness. You taught me how to love, how to be a father, how to become a better man. Do you want to be with me forever? Do you want to be my wife?" Evelyn cried as she nodded, unable to find words, and Marcus slid the ring onto her finger, beside his grandmother's ring. 2 rings, 2 promises, 2 parts of the same love story. 4 months later, they were married in the garden of the estate, now brought back to life with thousands of flowers in every color. It was not a lavish wedding with hundreds of guests. It was a small, warm ceremony with only the people closest to them. Maggie cried through the entire service, constantly dabbing her tears with a white lace handkerchief. Dante and Nico stood guard as always, but today they smiled too. Sophia, now more than a year old, sat in Maggie's arms, clapping and laughing when she saw her parents kiss. Their vows were not like ordinary vows. They did not promise sunny days or an easy road. They promised to stand beside each other in darkness and in light, in danger and in peace, through long nights filled with tears and mornings overflowing with laughter. Marcus promised he would never push her away again, never make decisions alone, never forget that they were a team. Evelyn promised she would always see the real man inside him, not the mafia boss the world feared, but the man she loved with all his wounds and flaws. That night, after the guests had gone and Sophia was asleep, Marcus led Evelyn into the garden and they danced under the moon. There was no music, only the wind whispering through the leaves and the rhythm of 2 hearts moving as one. Marcus held her, and Evelyn laid her head against his chest, and they swayed slowly, as if they had a lifetime to dance. "Thank you," Marcus whispered into her hair. "Thank you for coming back. Thank you for forgiving me. Thank you for giving me a second chance to do it right." Evelyn lifted her face, looked into the black eyes she loved, and smiled. "I used to think I was invisible," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For 27 years, I struggled to find my place. But since my mother passed 4 years ago, I truly felt like a ghost. The world looked straight through me, and no one truly saw me. Then I came here, and you saw me. Through the camera in the nursery, through the long nights when I sang Sophia to sleep, you saw me when I thought I was completely alone." She reached up and stroked his cheek. "Now I am not invisible anymore. I am seen. I am loved. I am home." Marcus bent down and kissed her, and the kiss tasted of happy tears and an everlasting promise. Around them, the garden lay quiet under the moonlight, and the house that had once been a prison had become a home. They had walked through hell, nearly lost each other, but in the end they had found their way back, and that was what mattered most. This story teaches us that true love is not perfect. It is full of stumbles, wrong choices, and deep wounds. But true love also means coming back, forgiving, choosing each other every day, no matter how hard life gets. It reminds us that every person deserves to be seen, to be loved, and to belong somewhere called home. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel, tap like, and share this video so more people can hear it. How do you feel about Evelyn and Marcus's journey? Have you ever felt invisible the way she did? Share what you feel deep in your heart in the comments below. We truly want to hear your story. I wish all of you watching this video strong health, a life filled with joy, and peaceful, happy days. Thank you for staying with